The last time you got sick, someone probably helped you. Maybe they brought you water. Maybe they told you to rest. Maybe they handed you a pill that took the fever down by morning. You did not think twice about any of it, because care is just what people do when someone else is suffering. But here is the question almost no one asks. Where did that instinct come from? Who was the first human to look at another human in pain and decide to stay? The answer reaches back further than civilization, further than agriculture, further than fire. Archaeologists once assumed early humans abandoned their weak, that illness meant death, and death was simply nature sorting things out, that survival was individual, brutal, and cold. Then the bones started telling a different story. In 1957, anthropologist Eric Trinkhaus published findings on a Neanderthal skeleton discovered in Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq. The individual had survived for years with a withered arm, a damaged eye socket, and severe arthritis. He could not have hunted. He could not have gathered. Someone fed him. Someone protected him. Someone kept him alive long enough to grow old. That changed everything. Because if a pre-human species was caring for its disabled members over 50,000 years ago, care is not a product of civilization. Care is something far older than cities or law or religion. Care is wired into the architecture of the human group itself. But how did ancient humans actually treat sickness when it arrived? The answer is stranger and more sophisticated than you might expect. Start with plants. Long before anyone wrote anything down, humans were cataloging the natural world for its medicinal properties. Researchers analyzing Neanderthal dental plaque have found chemical residues of yarrow, groundsel, and ephedra. These are not food plants. They are bitter, medicinal, and in the case of ephedra, a natural source of the compound we now synthesize as decongestant. Ancient humans were not stumbling onto these plants by accident. They were selecting them deliberately. Paleoanthropologist Karen Hardy, who led the dental plaque study, argued that this represented a pharmacopoeia, a working knowledge of remedies passed between individuals across generations. The first pharmacy was not a building. It was a memory, carried inside the group. And that knowledge was almost certainly held by someone specific. Every human society ever studied by anthropologists has produced a version of the same figure, the healer, the shaman, the medicine keeper. This is not coincidence. Researcher Weston LeBar documented this pattern across indigenous cultures on 6 continents, and what he found was consistent. Healing roles emerged everywhere humans gathered in groups. Someone always stepped forward to manage illness, injury, and the boundary between the living and the dead. Ancient healing was not purely physical, it was also psychological. And here is where the story gets genuinely strange. Ritual was medicine. Chanting, drumming, communal gathering around the sick individual, symbolic acts performed with apparent intention. To a modern eye, these look like superstition, but to a brain under the biological stress of illness, the presence of the group, the rhythm of sound, the sense of being seen and held by the community, these things activated something real. Cortisol dropped. Immune responses shifted. Pain perception changed. The placebo effect is not weakness. Neuroscientist Fabrizio Benedetti has spent decades demonstrating that ritual and expectation trigger measurable neurochemical responses. Ancient healers had no name for this, but they had discovered it empirically, through thousands of years of watching what helped people survive. They also performed surgery. Archaeological evidence from multiple sites across Europe and South America shows skulls with trepanation holes, deliberate circular openings bored into the cranium while the individual was still alive. And crucially, in many cases, the bone had healed around the opening, which means the patient survived, which means the procedure worked, at least some of the time. Ancient surgeons were operating on human brains without metal instruments or antibiotics and producing living patients. They set broken bones. They stitched wounds. They amputated limbs. A skeleton unearthed in France showed a forearm amputation performed roughly 7,000 years ago. The cut was clean. The bone healed fully. Someone performed that operation with stone tools and enough skill to keep the patient alive through infection, blood loss, and shock. That is not primitive medicine. That is medicine. So the next time someone brings you water when you are sick or sits beside you when you cannot sleep, understand what you are actually witnessing. You are watching something 50,000 years old. You are watching the behavior that may have separated your ancestors from every other species on this planet. Not the weapon, not the fire, the willingness to stay.